going to be putting in his 2 cents here. But thank you, Ree.
Thank you.
All right. Josh, how's it going?
Hello. How's it going, guys? I am doing very well. I just want to check. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm just on my cell phone, so.
There is some lag between your audio and your, like the words don't match. However, it is coming in clear.
It's like a half a second late.
Yeah, it's,
Ooh.
but
It's
yeah, it's not horrible, but it's definitely, it'll work just fine. Great. You ready to do this?
All right. Yeah.
I am.
Let's go ahead and bring our 2 debaters in because I do not want to butcher the debate topic. But I want to bring them in. We got TJump with us, and we also got Jeff Thun. What's going on, guys?
Hey, how's it going? I'm good.
Hey,
Jeff is a little laggy.
Yeah.
how we doing?
Are you on Wi-Fi, Jeff?
He's
Really bad.
Okay, using it. Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, I live in kind of a rural.
I'm going to, sometimes the only way to fix that is to kick and rejoin. So I just kicked him out of the studio. We'll have him rejoin, and hopefully that will
Well,
resolve.
you probably should have told him that before kicking him. Just
There's like
You know what? Here's what we're gonna do. If he can't come back, Ethan, you're jumping in debating TJump.
I'm not going against TJ.
Hey, I've already debated TJump. It's your turn.
No way.
I'll take the Christian position, so I'm gonna advocate for God in this one.
All right, fine. There is a topic I would be comfortable debating TJump on, and that is which is the superior version of Dragon Ball Z, Kai, Super, or the original?
Original, like it's stupid.
Thank you. With the Bruce Faulconer track.
But you got to get rid of. It's got to be dubbed audio. The original audio. The woman who plays Goku is just the most chainsawy, annoying voice I've ever heard in anime.
Dude, I prefer Sean Schemmel is my favorite Goku, and I actually got to interview him on my channel, so that was like
nice.
the coolest thing ever.
You guys are gonna hate me, but I haven't even seen Goku as not a little boy. He's right before he goes up into space to train to become like big man Goku. I've never seen that, and I refuse to watch anything past that point until I actually catch myself up.
Your
Well, I mean,
opinion
there's
no longer
always-
counts,
There's
Justin.
always
But
a Kid Goku. So no matter what happens in the show, there's always a kid. That exact same model is there. It just changes name to Gohan, pretty much.
Okay.
yeah, let's
All right.
hear your
Jeff,
audio.
that looks far better.
There's still a delay.
Okay, this is better.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot better.
Yeah, I got to tell
a
you
little
guys,
bit
since you were talking about Dragon Ball Z, or at least
It's a
Dragon
delay.
Ball, I'm not a Dragon Ball fan.
Hey Jeff, so real quick, I'm gonna take you off screen. So Jeff, there is about a 10-second delay between what we're saying and what you're hearing. We need you to switch to another device because right now,
Try turning his camera.
Yeah, try
try
turning off the video.
camera.
what about now?
That's
That's
Ree Woo.
That's Rewoo.
Hey Jeff, test 1 2. Yep, there's still a delay.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that stabilize it a little bit?
No, Jeff, if you can hear me right now, respond. Yeah. Nope. Okay, so we're gonna have to have him switch to another device. If this doesn't get fixed, Oz, we need someone to step in. What is the topic, TJump?
Is all involuntary impositions of will immoral?
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that. All right. Hopefully it works this time. Oz, we may need you to get a spare. To be honest, I don't know if this is going to work unless he gets on another.
Does this have a call-in option? Can he like call in number with his phone?
Oh, wait, it doesn't, but I can do that. Give me a second and I'll set up my call-in studio. Okay, Jeff, there is still a delay. I'm going to give you a number to call. You
What's the
won't
problem?
screen.
He's got a giant lag.
Super lag.
So, Oz, I'm going to set up my call-in studio real quick and give him a phone number to call, and then we can patch the audio in that way. Otherwise, you need someone to replace him. Because you're looking at like 6 to 10 seconds right now.
Okay. Yeah, just have him call in. I'll keep an ear on this. I'm working on a couple other things too, but I'll listen in. If you need me, let me know.
Cool.
Okie dokie.
Justin, if you could just talk for a second while I get this set up.
Sure,
That was
absolutely.
a nice tux blue shirt. I like the
I know.
tux shirt.
I was actually about to comment on that.
I wanted to dress up, so had to go all out.
Go big or go home.
Rented this out,
If we ever do these in person, the TART live debates, I'm going to get like a shirt exactly like that and wear it in.
And wait.
Yes. If you come to
not gonna have a
Austin,
shirt
all
on.
you have to do is sign up to be a favor delivery driver. It's like Postmates or Grubhub, but it's local to Austin.
Nice.
I did it for 2.5 hours and said no thanks. So. I said I'm happy with just the shirts that I got.
That's why you did it. You signed up just for the shirt. Like, whatever.
Literally for the shirts, and you also got this cooler bag that insulated bag to carry around groceries and stuff. So
Yeah, some of those drive places. You're muted, Ethan.
Sorry to interrupt.
Ethan,
Yeah, if you can hear me now, I put a number for you in the private chat. Please call it so we can patch you in that way. He just disconnected. Hopefully that's sorry, everyone watching. We're trying to get this resolved as quickly as possible. Sometimes Wi-Fi and StreamYard doesn't always play nice. So for those other streamers that are watching, do not rely on Wi-Fi. It is not the best technology, especially when you're streaming. You should always be direct connected. It doesn't matter if you have a gigabyte of speed, be on LAN. There are issues like this. Hopefully call soon so we can get this.
Only I had a webcam.
Do you guys see a white pixel right here on my screen?
No.
Okay.
Well, hold on. Lean back again.
So it's right there.
All right. Yeah, can you hear us?
No, I don't see it.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. And there's no background noise. Okay, cool. All right, so Jeff is going to be on screen. Here's what I'll do. Whenever you guys want to get it started, go ahead.
All right. Okay. So he's on screen. We can go ahead. Who's taking the Who's taking the first opening statement?
I don't think we planned that out. I'm happy to take the affirmative that all impositions of will are in fact immoral.
Okay. Well, let me start the opening statement video, and right after that, you go ahead, TJump.
Well. Hey, TJump, I'm really sorry. I just wanted to jump in here really quick and say to both of you guys that during this debate, I don't want any of you guys cutting each other off. If you guys cut each other off, I will step in and tell you to stop doing that. And if I feel either of you guys are misunderstanding the other person, I'm going to step into and cut you off again and ask you to steel man the other person's position, just so we don't go down the rabbit hole and go off into tangents that are not part of the debate. So other than that, respect each other, guys, and I'm sorry for cutting you off there, TJump, but go ahead.
What is the time for the opening? How many minutes?
5.
5 minutes. All right. So my position is that all involuntary impositions of will are immoral. And just to clarify, it is not an involuntary imposition of will for you to not be able to control another person, because an involuntary imposition of will would apply to all parties involved. So if you will to control somebody else, but you can't do it, it's not an involuntary imposition of will, because it has to be voluntary for the other person. Since they are voluntarily not wanting to be controlled, it wouldn't actually count as an immoral action. So an involuntary imposition of will means that either yourself, your will, or your property is being imposed upon without your consent. That's what I mean by an involuntary imposition of will. And any case of that is always going to be immoral, and there's a very simple test to show this is the case. For any action that would require a involuntary imposition of will, You could say, if I was all powerful like a god, could I make a more moral action in this case? So, for example, take the trolley problem. If there's a trolley heading down the tracks, it's going to hit 5 people. You see a switch, you could pull the switch and it'll hit 1 person. Now, in the case that you pull the switch, it's going to kill 1 person. That's an involuntary imposition of will. So I would define that as immoral. Even though it's the best you could do, I would still say it's immoral, because if you were all powerful, if you were a god, there's a more moral option. You could lift the train up with your power to make it go over and be fine. You could teleport the people out of the way. You could give them personal force fields. There's lots of things you could do in that situation if you were all powerful. And those other things, those are the objectively moral thing. That's the objective moral standard that I ascribe to, is that there is this objective morality, and this objective morality is that any involuntary imposition of will is immoral. And the reason for that is because any involuntary imposition of will that is required for us to do, there's always going to be a more moral option that we just don't have the capability to do because we lack the power. Therefore, our subjective moral actions of flipping the switch isn't the true objective moral standard. And the way, again, to test this is just, well, imagine if you were all powerful, would that be the moral thing to do? It comes back to the analogy of the doctor in the 1800s. Back in then, to save your life, if you got shot in the leg, he'd have to cut your leg off because there's no way for him to fight the infection. If you get an infection, you're going to die because they can't do anything to stop it. So they cut your leg off. But in today's modern medicine, if a doctor cut your leg off for getting a bullet wound, you'd prosecute him. That would be illegal because there's much better options that you could do. He could give you an antibiotic, which will just save your life completely, and he has no need to cut your leg off. So the reason the doctor in the 1800s is not extremely immoral for cutting your leg off is because that's the best he could do given his limitations. And the reason the doctor is immoral today is because he isn't using the best, using all of his power available to do the least imposition of will. And if we take that to its extreme and imagine you're an all-powerful being who could do essentially anything, if you do anything less than that and choose to impose on will without actually it being necessary, that's always going to be an immoral action. It's always going to be immoral to impose on someone's will without their consent when there is another option that doesn't cause that. And that, given if that is the case, and I'm right about that, then every single involuntary imposition of will is going to be immoral in all cases. And again, just to clarify, when I say involuntary imposition of will, it doesn't apply to you not being able to control another person, because it has to be voluntary for them too. All wills involved. Involuntary imposition of will doesn't just mean your will, it means all wills. And I will conclude there.
Excellent.
Okay.
Jeff?
Yes, I'm still here.
All right.
I'm
Great.
just finishing off some notes. Okay.
Excellent. Whenever you're ready.
Whenever I'm ready. Are you ready? All right.
I am, yes.
My opponent wishes. Okay, you are? Okay. Here we go. If my opponent wishes to prove that, as stated, all involuntary impositions of will are immoral, then he truly has a monumental task ahead of him. Given the absolute language of all, as opposed to most or even some, it is not morally sufficient to demonstrate or even irrefutably prove that some or even most involuntary impositions are in fact immoral. Now, I must, in fact, reasonably demonstrate that all, meaning 100%, are immoral. Not even 99.99% would be sufficient to satisfy this complete burden of proof. On the contrary, my burden of proof is to demonstrate that just one involuntary imposition could be reasonably categorized as either morally positive or morally neutral, then the affirmative position has failed to satisfy his burden of proof. Therefore, the first matter in which my opponent's hypothesis fails is in seeking to assert a posture of objectivity without satisfying the 4 basic criteria of an objective moral claim. Number 1 is contextuality, being that an objectively moral claim is jurisdictional and authoritative. Number 2 is conciseness. An objectively moral claim is simple, both to communicate and adjudicate. Number 3, it is commensurate. An objectively moral claim is neither excessively liberative nor excessively oppressive in either its regulation or its enforcement. And number 4, compatibility. An an objectively moral claim is reasonably aligned with experiential reality. These four criteria, like the four legs of a stool, are primary basic essentials of an objectively moral claim. All four must be demonstrably intact. If any one of the four is missing, then the moral claim has subsequently been not objective, but subjective. At first glance, this appears to pass the test of conciseness, given that it's just demonstrably simple to communicate. This is credit to its brevity and its alliterative word choice. However, problems begin to emerge when you examine that word choice more closely. Merriam-Webster defines the word imposition as either a verb or a noun, being the action or process of being imposed, and a thing that is imposed, in particular, an unfair or unwelcome demand or burden. I personally find it to be less than ideally helpful when a word is in itself used in its own definition. Therefore, the word imposed is further defined by Merriam-Webster as a noun and a verb as follows. Force, something unwelcome or unfamiliar to be accepted or to be put in place, and to take advantage of by demand of attention and or commitment. Note the prominent use of clearly subjective language in both definitions, being unfair, unwelcome 2 separate times, and unfamiliar. This imposes numerous complications upon the hypothesis. Unfair, unwelcome, and unfamiliar are contingent descriptors, dictated by individual experience and dictated by environmental circumstances. There is no objective rule or principle that can quantify whether an action or actor can be objectively unwelcome or objectively unfamiliar. This makes it impossible to determine when it has properly occurred, thus failing the adjudication criteria of conciseness. That one missing leg is sufficient to collapse the stool of his hypothesis, but it is not the only weakness. The inherent subjectiveness of it makes it impossible to establish commensurate regulations, enforcement, or punitive recourses for it. Additionally, there is no rational explanation for how any of those things could be logically determined or applied without them also being involuntary impositions in and of themselves. And I'll go ahead and call it there.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. All right. Next, we're going to be moving into the open discussion. All right, guys, welcome to the open discussion.
I'd like to start by, could you go over your 4 C's again a little bit slower so I can type them out? Contextuality.
Okay, contextuality. Do you want the definitions as well?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Contextuality, an objective moral claim, is jurisdictional and authoritative. Number 2 is conciseness. An objective moral claim is
Slower. So
and adjudicate.
Wait, slow down. So go back to I got the first one. What's the second one? Concise.
Conciseness.
Yep. Go for the definition of that one.
Simple. Yeah, simple to communicate and adjudicate. Third is commensurate, being neither excessively liberative nor excessively oppressive in either its regulation or its enforcement. And then the fourth is compatible or compatibility, being reasonably aligned with experiential reality.
Okay, so let's start with concise. Like certain laws of physics are not very concise. They're very complicated. Does that make them not objective?
That doesn't necessarily make it not objective, but the key is that those are not necessarily moral either in their, their jurisdiction, more or less. Like gravity is kind of hard to explain, but that doesn't make it not cause things to fall down to the ground.
Right. So why do you think that being concise would be required in an objective law? If it's an objective law, it doesn't matter if we can explain it, does it? Like the fact that we can explain something simply doesn't make it more or less objective, does it?
Well, so conciseness is its ability to both be able to communicate and adjudicate. Adjudicate here being be able to identify if it has or has not occurred. So in the instance of a moral claim like you shouldn't kill, very easy to explain it. And it's also very easy to identify when it has and has not occurred. That makes it a reasonable claim, although, like I said, it doesn't necessarily make it objective or not, either on any one of those four criteria. It's all four of them combined that make something actually objective. If you have only one or three or two, that's just a subjective claim.
Yeah, so that's what I'm asking about. Like, where did you come up with these definitions of objectivity? Because they're not required in any definition of objectivity I've ever seen before. So it doesn't seem like concise is required for anything objective. If it's objective in reality, it doesn't matter if it's concise or if we understand it or if we can understand if it happened. It's true regardless of whether or not we understand it, regardless of whether or not it's simple. Therefore, this criteria seems completely irrelevant to objectivity.
Well, on the one hand, it's kind of an amalgam combined from like moral theory, and that the more elaborative or the more, I guess you kind of could say, into the weeds a rule or a law or something becomes, the less and less objective, the less and less even morally neutral it becomes. So in the instance of like with lawmakers, if the more pages that get amended onto a bill, the less and less even enforceable it becomes.
Well, enforceability is irrelevant to whether or not it's true, right? So whether or not we can enforce a law doesn't matter. Like if we couldn't enforce it, that wouldn't make it less objective. Let's say God said it's objectively moral that all humans must fly. Well, we can't fly. We can't do it. Does that make it less objective because we can't do it?
Well, that right there fails in a different criteria, which would be the compatibility with reality. Humans can't fly, so it's irrelevant.
I'm not following your argument here. So my argument is that conciseness is irrelevant to objectivity. Reality doesn't care how easy it is for us to say something. It's true in reality, regardless of whether or not we can say it at all. If morality was something beyond our comprehension, it's still objective, regardless of whether or not we can understand it. Us being able to understand it is inherently subjective. It has nothing to do with objectivity. So it seems like this criteria
to understand something is not a criteria for its ability to communicate or identify it.
Yeah, it is. Like if you can't understand it, how could anyone communicate it to you, or could you communicate it to them?
Because honestly, like if you think about it, that it's something more along the lines of, if you can't communicate something, then you can't also enforce it either.
I'm fine with that, but enforcement again would be that's the commiserate one. So I want to keep that one for later. But so it seems like I've demonstrated that conciseness is just irrelevant to objectivity. It doesn't matter if it's concise or not. Something can be true in reality, regardless of whether or not we can express it simply to communicate it or to adjudicate it. So then the next thing you brought up was enforcement. Like enforcement is also the commensurate, excessively liberal, oppressive to regulate enforcement. So that's this one, which is also irrelevant to objectivity. The fact that we can enforce a law is irrelevant to its objectivity. It is immoral to drown babies. God drowned babies. God's immoral. The fact that we can't punish God doesn't make him not immoral just because we can't enforce it. Our ability to enforce, like Hitler was wrong to kill the Jews. The fact that we can't enforce it upon him, because he has nukes and a big army, doesn't mean he wasn't wrong to do it. Our ability to enforce laws doesn't make them moral or immoral. The objective morality, it's wrong to kill people regardless of whether or not we can punish you or stop you from doing it, right? Like, does it only wrong if we can stop
finding it in a subjective way?
What is?
That's saying if I can't enforce it, then it's not objective, and that's not reasonably true. with the example, like you say, that God or whoever the objective enforcement is needs to be able to enforce the law. And for instance, if I see somebody kill someone else, it is not penchant on me to enforce the law that murder is wrong because I'm not a cop. That doesn't make the law non-objective that killing is wrong. It doesn't make it acceptable for killing either. What it does is that it just means that I personally am not in the position to enforce the law. It does not make something that is objectively wrong.
Okay, but why does that matter to objective morality? So there's no connection with the ability to be enforced, therefore objective. Like, we can't enforce certain laws of physics. That doesn't mean they're not objective. It's still objective whether or not we can enforce them.
That's not moral either.
Why does that matter to morality?
It's not a moral law, therefore it's not relevant to this conversation.
Why are you special pleading and saying morality has these extra criteria and that doesn't seem to be in any other definition of objectivity? Because I think moral objectivity is the same as physics objectivity.
It's in the hypothesis itself. All involuntary impositions of will are immoral.
Yes, right? But that doesn't mean enforced.
The claim is about morality.
Right.
Therefore, the only claims that are relevant to this discussion would be those that have a moral grounding to begin with.
Right, but nowhere in my definition does it say enforcement. Enforcement isn't anywhere in my definition. You have added that. Like, why would we need enforcement for morality?
A moral claim, these are the criteria it must subscribe to be considered a moral claim.
Yeah, I'm saying you're wrong about that. You've just made up these criteria. They have nothing to do with objective morality. No one in philosophy accepts these as reasonable definitions. You just made them up, and I'm demonstrating that one at a time. So conciseness, you don't need for objective morality. It doesn't matter if it's simple or not. It's going to be true regardless of whether or not we can express it simply. You don't need enforcement. It's true independent of whether or not we can enforce it or anybody can enforce it. If it's subjective, that means it's true independent of any opinions, regardless of whether or not we can enforce it. Enforcement doesn't matter to truth. Like the fact that anyone can enforce something has nothing to do with it.
Because the problem, like continuing with the conciseness, how do you know if something is or is not true if it hasn't been communicated?
Well, that's
in order for something to be determined as true or false, there must first be a hypothesis stated that is penchant upon the ability to communicate it, and then also adjudicate whether or not that thing has occurred or not to determine trueness or falseness.
Well, that's epistemology. So epistemology is how we know things, but we're not talking about epistemology. We're talking about ontology. So things can be true regardless of whether or not we know them.
Ontology until you cross the bridge of epistemology to it.
That's irrelevant to the topic, because the topic is it objective? Not can we know if it's objective. So something can be objective regardless of whether or not we know it. So it's objectively true that there are planets around Alpha Centauri.
If you can't know it, then you can't claim that it is true either. You can't just say that something is true if you don't know that it is true.
That's not part of the topic right now. So right now we're saying, is these 4 criteria required for objective morality? And the answer is no. Something can be objective if we never know it. If we never discover objective morality, it can still be objective morality. The fact that we know it or can enforce it or that it's concise, completely irrelevant. So the same would be true of any law of physics. Like if there's planets around Alpha Centauri, that is true or false regardless of whether or not we know it. There is an objective truth to the matter. There are objectively
not a moral claim.
Morality doesn't make a difference here.
Planets around Alpha Centauri, whether or not there's life on the moon Titan, is not a moral claim. Therefore, that in itself is an irrational defeater.
You keep interrupting me. So again, your special pleading saying morality is a special kind of objectivity that requires these kinds of extra criteria that you've made up that aren't required in any other kind of objectivity. You're saying, well, moral objectivity is special. It requires these extra 4 traits. And what I'm demonstrating is no, it doesn't. The fact that we can know it doesn't make it objective. What objective means is that it's true regardless of whether or not we know it. So the fact that you're saying it must be knowable, it must be enforceable, it must be simple, all of those are inherently subjective. Your definition defines morality as subjective because you're having these subjective criteria, that it's known by these specific minds, that it can be communicated by these specific minds, subjective, that it's must be enforceable by some mind. All of these are subjective to a mind. These are by definition subjective morality, not objective. You've confused or begging the question by imposing subjectivity into your definition, which again isn't accepted by anybody in philosophy. So these criterion you've made up are objectively provably false to have anything to do with objective morality. Like, just take it outside of the context of morality, place it in any other objective context. Does the fact that it's simple to explain make gravity not objective if it's too complicated? No, it's still objective regardless of whether or not it's simple to explain. Is it objective whether or not we can force it? Yes, it doesn't matter if we can enforce it, it's still objective. If no humans existed, completely unenforceable, no one could know it, it's impossible to communicate it, is it still objective? Yes, objectivity has nothing to do with those three things. So what was the fourth one? Compatibility?
You asked.
What was the fourth criterion?
Experiential reality.
What do you mean by that?
It's simple that if, like, you make a lot of appeals to, even in your opening statement regarding, like, if you could be all powerful, you could make more moral actions, but that's not grounded in experiential reality. None of us are all powerful. Therefore, that criteria for judging somebody's morality is irrelevant and in itself like a ridiculous imposition even on the subject matter itself. But
you're a
still,
theist,
even
right?
with, like, as you're saying of it, with gravity enforces itself by pulling things towards the densest point of matter. It enforces itself. It doesn't require a mind to enforce it because gravity in itself enforces itself. Additionally, when I pick something up and I drop it, I have observed, it has been communicated to me that gravity is still the law.
You got some really bad background noise,
Therefore,
like a vacuum or something.
It's something that. What was that?
There's some background noise, like a vacuum or something that's like making it hard to hear.
I can't hear that, TJump.
Not on my end.
I can. There's
Okay, it's gone now. So you're a theist, right? You believe in God. This isn't specifically relevant, but I'm just.
Yeah, I did, but
okay. So just to, like, your criterion of compatibility is, does it align with our ability to act on it? Like, God as the perfect moral standard, none of us can ever live up to the perfect moral standard in Christianity, right?
That's still not really relevant to anything I've
I'm going to bring it in the next sentence. So
go ahead.
If Jesus and God, we are all born full of sin and we can't redeem ourselves without, like, Jesus doing something right. So it's not realistic for us to be able to live up to the perfect moral standards. Is that correct in Christianity on our own?
I imagine so. I'm not following how this is relevant, though.
Because what your argument is that we must be able to do it with ourselves for it to be objective morality, which means by your definition of requiring compatibility with aligned with experiential reality, and saying that my analogy of comparing it to an extreme, like an objective extreme, makes it no longer relevant and no longer an objective morality. By that definition, your God also fails in objective morality, because in Christianity, the same thing is true. We can't live up to the perfect moral standard in Christianity, just like we can't live up to the perfect moral standard in mine of being all powerful. So your criterion eliminates the Christian God, as well as my model, if it was true. Now it's not true. Like, the fact objectively, the fact that the universe has some distance is true whether or not we can measure it. The fact that we can actually measure the distance between us and the edge of the universe doesn't matter to whether or not it is actually the case that it is that far. The fact that the speed of light is 300,000 meters per second, square meter per second, or whatever, the fact that we can't travel that far, it doesn't make it less subjective. So our ability to achieve it doesn't matter to objective morality. Again, it's a inherently subjective criterion. And you're saying our subjective limitations, that we can only flip the switch in the trolley problem, we can't make it make the train fly or whatever, would mean that therefore that has to be the objective morality. The objective morality has to be based on your subjective limitations. And that's a contradiction. You can't say objective morality, which has to be true independent of any subjective criterion, is contingent on your subjective physical limitations, like clearly that's a contradiction, and again invalidates your own hypothesis.
Actually, it's just a restatement of one of the conditions that you entered into your opening statement, saying that you would not consider the Civil War battle surgeon to be immoral for cutting someone's leg off that had received a severe lead wound or something, because of the fact that due to his limitations, he had no other choice. In the same way that it has to, that's simply that's the context, that is the criteria of compatibility. You're acting like that in itself is an attestament to what I've said. But again, no, you don't have to be able to enforce it. You also don't have to be able to live up to a standard either in order for an objective standard to be present. In the same way that you don't have to travel at the speed of light for the speed of light to remain the speed of light, or the fact that I don't have to go around running after other people and pulling their stuff down because gravity is true. Gravity does it on its own. That's the standard, that gravity causes things to fall at whatever it is, 9.86 meters per second. It's the standard. If somebody drops something, it will always fall at that rate.
Right, and if somebody kills somebody, it will always be immoral.
The law, like the police, I don't have to call the police if somebody's holding something out and they let it go and it doesn't start to fall. That's absurd.
Right, and if someone kills someone, it's always going to be immoral. Either. So I wanted to go back to your point. When I said that the doctor was subjectively moral for cutting the leg off, subjectively moral means, and objectively it's an involuntary imposition of will, so objectively it's immoral. The subjectively moral means it's the least imposition of will they can accomplish given their subjective limitations. So subjective morality equals objectively it's immoral. It's just a justified immoral action. So that's not actually incompatible on my model. The model explains that perfectly well. A subjectively moral action is the best you can do given your limitations. And we can know it's a subjectively moral action by comparing it to the objective standard, which is any involuntary imposition of will is wrong. And so you can try to achieve that standard or get as close as possible given your limitations to know if what your action is the subjectively moral action, which means objectively immoral, but it's justified because it's the best you can do with your subjective limitations, which makes it subjectively moral. So it's there was no contradiction there in my example, and you can use the principle I presented in the opening to demonstrate this. You can say, if you had all powerful, would this be the best thing to do? That gives you the answer to objective morality, in which case it would be immoral to cut the leg off if you had all power. So that seems to support my point.
Even with, like, you use the train analogy a lot of, like, well, why don't you just phase the train like Kitty Pryde or something? Well, that's an imposition on the train, is it not? That is also
yes, it is.
An imposition on whoever the conductor of that train would be. Maybe the train conductor does not want to be saved in order to save that person's life. You would be imposing your will on not only that person, but their property and goods at that time.
Are we out of time, or do I have time to respond to that?
Making that not a superior option.
Are we out of time, or do I have time to respond to that?
I think we're just about out of time. I don't have a direct timer, but the last time it said 30 seconds. There it is, 0. Okay. We are done with the open discussion, guys. Thank you guys very much for that. Next, we'll be moving into our closing statements. You will each have 5 minutes. And if we can just move right. Now, I forget who started us off. I believe TJump, you started us off. So, Jeff, you will be going first in our closing statements. So, 5 minutes to you, Jeff.
Okay, ready? So before I get started, I just wanted to say thanks just for, like, putting this all together. I know it's taken a lot of work. I thought, like, this is when I emailed Austin about this this insane idea. I didn't think it was ever going to go anywhere, but here it is. Like, I think this has been a really great experience watching the other debates as well. So anyway, let me get into it. My opponent's burden relies heavily upon him giving and receiving of consent. He, however, labors not in the duty of distinguishing the meaning or even the real existence of this consent. Under a hard or materialistic determinism perspective, a real objective consent, which is contingent from the existence of free will, is not even logically possible. While I recognize that he himself is not a hard determinist, that alone is not sufficient to absolve his hypothesis from that line of criticism. Nevertheless, even if consent can be proven to exist, that does not simultaneously grant that any position against that consent is universally and exclusively immoral. The initial condition in which it fails is in not ascertaining the degree of consent necessary to absolve an imposition of being involuntary. The dictionary defines consent as permission for something to happen or agreement to join in a mutual act. Organizations intimate to such diverse applications of this definition, such as Planned Parenthood, the ACLU, the U.S. Attorney General, and the UN Human Rights Council, recognize 4 distinct categories of consent, varying in severity, reasonable attainability, and reasonable perceptibility and legal applicability. Number 1 is implied consent, which is inferred from nonverbal acts and/or circumstances. Expressed consent, clear and unmistakable, given in writing or speech. Informed consent, clarified appreciation and comprehension of circumstantial facts. And unanimous consent, collective agreement by a diverse body constituted by election. My opponent has stated in past debates that his own personal definition of consent, which is as follows: preference being tantamount to consent, clarifying and cementing this intent with a ice cream metaphor. This notable absence of that definition from the list above aside, this ad hoc definition hosts a chorus of other significant problems, none the least of which is that categorically preference is not tantamount to consent. One possible path out of this conundrum he may pursue in his previously stated belief that technology will eventually eclipse culturally contingent beliefs, or that, quote, technology improving culturally contingent beliefs will eventually die off, relegating to the doom pile the aforementioned categories of consent. However, even if we intellectually grant that assumption, how can consent in the abstract exist without pragmatic categorization? Additionally, even if we grant that our current contextually contingent beliefs and/or values regarding consent do die off, as he prophesies, the result will not be a utopic cultural vacuum, devoid of culturally contingent beliefs. Instead, it would simply be a new culture with its own culturally contingent beliefs flowing out of it. The final matter regarding consent in which my opponent fails to ascertain his burden of proof is in not effectively distinguishing active imposition from passive imposition. Under his stated view, even a non-person or impersonal force, such as a rock or a train or even gravity itself, not only can be, but are objectively and exclusively immoral when unwelcome. Benign inconveniences, such as a line at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, would be categorized as immoral, despite evident logic to the contrary, as well as benevolent actions such as forcing an anorexic model to eat, pushing a child out of the path of a moving vehicle, and even the act of installing a fence that would prevent a wandering child from wandering out in traffic in the first place would also be considered immoral under this view. I don't know where I am on time, but I think
that is 5 minutes exactly right there, Jeff.
Was it?
Thank you very much. Yes, it was exactly 5 minutes. So wonderful. All right, TJump, you are up, my friend.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Oz, for hosting. Thanks, Jeff, for being here and debating. Thanks for the Josh and the other guys here for also hosting. I really appreciate the opportunity as always. I'd like to start by noting that Jeff brought up a bunch of stuff in his closing remarks that he didn't bring up in the debate. That's kind of like a cheesy debate tactic where you bring up a lot of things that I never got to address as if it somehow wins because they're points that I didn't have time to, or he didn't bring up for me to address in the debate. You're not supposed to do that in a debate, just so you know. So Jeff brought up 4 criteria that he said are required for objective morality, which mine doesn't have: contextuality, conciseness, commiserate, and compatibility. Contextuality means that it must have some like jurisdiction or authority. Like authority doesn't matter. The fact that we can enforce something makes no difference to objective morality. He brought up conciseness, that the fact that we have to be able to express it. The fact that we express something is irrelevant to objective facts. Like the fact that gravity was objective before we could even express it to know it was there. It doesn't make a difference. Commiserate, the ability to regulate things. The fact that we can enforce something is again irrelevant to objective morality. It doesn't matter whether we can enforce it. It's true regardless of whether or not we can enforce it. And compatibility is the experiential thing. Again, the fact that we can or cannot do something doesn't make it objectively true. That's by definition subjective. When we can subjectively do something does not make it objectively true. He mentioned that imposing on the train. Like, yes, if you move the train, you're imposing on the train, but the train doesn't have a will, so it's not an imposition of will. He did mention the conductor. The conductor does have a will, so imposing on the conductor's will would be immoral. So there's a better option, which is you could make the people on the tracks ethereal. So you're not imposing on their will, you're not imposing on the train conductor's will. And so the most moral thing would be to not impose on the conductor or the people on the tracks, not impose on anybody. That would be the objective moral standard. So you would consider the imposition of the train conductor as well. Again, he mentioned the fact that whether or not we can know something is consent. Like, that doesn't matter. If you're harming a paraplegic and they can't tell you that you're hurting them, that doesn't make it not immoral just because you don't know it. The fact that we know it or not is irrelevant. It's immoral regardless of whether or not you know it's immoral. It's confusing just epistemology, what we know, and ontology, which is the fact of the matter. He mentioned cultural bases, that all of our morality is based on culture. Like, that if our morality changes over time, it's still cultural. I mean, that's true, but my model predicts that this is going to be true across all different species in the universe, not just a culture, and that they're all going to congregate on a single set of facts, of moral facts, just like they're going to congregate on a single set of facts about science or reality, which indicate it's not subjective, it's not cultural. Like, science is not cultural, or the scientific facts are not cultural. Therefore, because if the facts are congregated on by all different species and all different cultures throughout the universe, would also indicate morality was not cultural. So I'm not really impressed by Jeff's argument here. I think that those 4 principles he made up, he didn't make a good argument for why they were required. He just kind of said, these are required for objective morality. I'm like, why? Like, where did he get this definitions from? I was really looking for him to present an argument for why these are required, not just assert they're required, but he didn't provide that. And I think that will conclude. I think that's enough. Again, thanks guys for having me on. Really appreciate it. And I will conclude there.
All right. Well, thank you guys. That was awesome. All right. We got everybody else coming back on now. Sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, whoops. I did not mean to put Gauntlet.
He didn't. He didn't.
Wait, who am I missing? Oh, never
You're
mind.
not missing anybody because Jeff's still on the phone.
Oh, yeah, this is so weird. All right, so yeah, Jeff's routed through my audio.
You can just
Jeff.
turn your camera off and just use your name, because his name is Jeff too. So
Wait a second. Is Jeff imposing on your will, making you the middleman between him and this show?
So, real quick, we are like way over time. So, what'd you think of it, Justin?
I thought it was a really good debate. I don't agree with TJump on his position, but I feel like the way he articulated his position, you don't necessarily have to be correct to be the better debater. So in my personal opinion, I would actually vote for TJump in this one.
I'll give my vote after Josh decides. Well, I don't know. Do you already know who won, Josh?
Yeah.
Okay, so then before you give your opinion, I'm actually going to side with TJump as well. He was clean, precise, just bam. Josh, please.
Yeah, so there are definitely a lot of factors that go into the way we're judging these debates, and I'm kind of with you on this, Justin. I I disagree with the position of TJump in this debate, but due to a lot of different factors, including espousing your position clearly, refuting what the other person was saying, not staying on topic. Staying on topic was very good from both sides on this one. But this is going to have to go to TJump for those reasons and more. That since we're out of slow on time here, I'll just keep the rest there. So yeah, TJump.
All right,
goes to you. But yeah, I just also want to say, Jeff, very well done. Both of you guys were great. So thank you.
It definitely takes some guts to go up against TJump, who literally does this for a living. I mean,
yeah,
you have to have a set.
So props to both of you. We really do got to move on, but TJump, congratulations, Jeff, both of you. Thanks for doing this.
All right, we'll see you in the next round, TJump. Thank you, Josh, for moderating for us. But we are going to move on to the next one, and
Absolutely.
bring our next moderator in.